The kingdom of Persia shimmered under a desert sun. King Xerxes, ruler of this vast land, sat upon his throne. He was powerful, but his heart was heavy. Queen Vashti was gone, banished from his sight.
The king needed a new queen. He called for the most beautiful women in the land to be brought to the palace.
Among the women chosen was a young Jewess named Esther. She was an orphan raised by her cousin Mordecai. Esther had gentle eyes and a quiet strength.
Mordecai loved Esther as his own daughter. He taught her their traditions and the importance of their faith.
When Esther left for the palace, Mordecai made her promise to keep her Jewish heritage a secret. Persia was a dangerous place for their people. Esther agreed, trusting in Mordecai's wisdom. She entered the palace, a world of luxury and intrigue.
The king's wives and concubines came from many lands. Each woman hoped to win the king's favor and become his queen.
Esther's beauty shone brighter with each passing day. She was graceful and kind. The eunuch in charge of the king's women, Hegai, was taken by Esther's spirit. He treated her with kindness.
Hegai gave her special oils and perfumes. He ensured she had the best place in the king's harem.
The day arrived when it was Esther's turn to be presented to King Xerxes.
As she entered the king's chamber, all eyes turned to her.
Her beauty took the king's breath away.
But it was her gentle heart and quiet dignity that truly captivated him.
King Xerxes placed his royal crown upon Esther's head. She was now the queen of Persia. Meanwhile, Mordecai spent his days at the palace gates. He watched over Esther, even from afar.
One day I overheard a plot. 2 of the king's guards planned to assassinate King Xerxes.
Mordecai quickly informed Esther, who told the king. The plot was foiled, and Mordecai's loyalty was recorded in the king's chronicles. Haman, a proud and vengeful man, was promoted to a high position in the king's court. His rise to power was swift and marked by his ruthless ambition. He was a man who thrived on authority and the subjugation of others. The king, impressed by Haman's cunning and strategic mind, granted him unprecedented power and influence. Haman's new position allowed him to wield significant control over the kingdom's affairs, and he relished every moment of it. He expected everyone to bow before him. This expectation was not merely a formality, it was a demand for absolute submission. Haman's ego was insatiable, and he took great pleasure in seeing others lower themselves in his presence. The act of bowing was a symbol of his dominance and superiority, and he enforced it with an iron fist. Those who dared to defy him faced severe consequences, as Haman's wrath was both swift and merciless.
But I, a devout Jew, refused to bow to anyone but God. My faith and principles were unwavering, and I could not, in good conscience, submit to a man like Haman. My refusal was not an act of rebellion, but a testament to my devotion and belief in a higher power. I knew the risks involved, but my commitment to my faith was stronger than my fear of retribution.
This enraged Haman. His fury was palpable, and he saw my defiance as a personal affront. Haman's anger was not just about the act of not bowing. It was about the challenge to his authority and the threat to his ego. He could not tolerate any form of dissent, especially from someone he considered inferior. Haman's rage grew with each passing day, and he became consumed with thoughts of revenge.
When I discovered Mordecai was Jewish, I devised a wicked plan. My hatred for him extended to his entire people, and I sought to eradicate them all. The plan was not just about punishing Mordecai, it was about sending a message of fear and dominance. I spent countless hours plotting and scheming, ensuring that my plan was foolproof and that no one could stand in my way. The thought of annihilating an entire race filled me with a twisted sense of satisfaction. I convinced the king to issue a decree to annihilate all Jews in Persia. Using my influence and manipulation, I painted the Jews as a threat to the kingdom's stability. The king, trusting my judgment, agreed to my proposal without hesitation. The decree was sealed with the royal seal, making it irrevocable. With the king's backing, my plan was set into motion, and the fate of the Jewish people seemed sealed. Little did I know this would set the stage for a dramatic turn of events that would change everything.
Mordecai was distraught. He sent word to Esther, pleading with her to reveal her true identity to the king and beg for her people's lives. The decree had been issued, and the fate of the Jewish people seemed sealed. Mordecai knew that Esther, with her unique position as queen, was their only hope. He hoped she would find the courage to act.
Esther, you must speak to the king. Our people's lives depend on it. You are in a position of power for a reason. Do not think that you will escape any more than all the other Jews. If you remain silent, relief and deliverance will arise from another place, but you and your father's family will perish.
Esther was terrified. Approaching the king without being summoned was forbidden. The law was clear. Anyone who approached the king without being called could be put to death unless the king extended his golden scepter to them. The weight of her people's fate rested heavily on her shoulders. She knew the risk she was taking, but she also understood the urgency of the situation.
It could mean death. The fear was palpable, but so was the sense of duty. Esther knew that her silence could lead to the annihilation of her people. She had to make a choice, to risk her life for the greater good or to stay silent and safe, but at a terrible cost.
Perhaps you were made queen for just such a time as this. These words echoed in Esther's mind. She realized that her position was not just a matter of chance but perhaps a divine appointment. She decided to fast and pray for 3 days, asking her people to do the same. After that, she would go to the king, even if it meant facing death. Her resolve was firm. She would act, trusting that her courage and faith would guide her through the perilous path ahead.
Finding strength in her faith and love for her people, Esther decided to act. She knew that the fate of her people rested on her shoulders, and the weight of this responsibility was immense. Yet, in the quiet moments of prayer and meditation, she found a wellspring of courage that she never knew existed. The ancient setting around her, filled with the whispers of her ancestors, seemed to infuse her with a sense of purpose and determination. She was not just a queen, she was a beacon of hope for her people. The decision to approach the king was fraught with danger, but Esther's resolve was unshakable. She understood that true leadership often required great personal sacrifice, and she was prepared to face whatever consequences lay ahead. She dressed in her royal robes and approached the king's throne room, her heart pounding in her chest. Each step she took echoed through the grand halls, a reminder of the gravity of her mission. The royal robes she wore were not just a symbol of her status, but a shield of dignity and strength. As she walked, memories of her life flashed before her eyes, her humble beginnings, the trials she had faced, and the love she had for her people. The throne room loomed ahead, a place of power and judgment. Esther knew that her appearance there unsummoned could mean her death, but she also knew that turning back was not an option. Her people needed her, and she would not let them down.
My king, I have something to reveal. The words hung in the air, heavy with significance. Esther's voice, though steady, carried the weight of her people's plight. She looked into the eyes of King Xerxes, searching for a glimmer of understanding, a sign that he would listen to her plea. The court fell silent, every eye fixed on the queen. This was the moment of truth, the culmination of her courage and faith. She took a deep breath, ready to unveil the secret that had burdened her heart for so long.
King Xerxes, seeing his beloved queen unsummoned, held out his scepter, sparing her life. The gesture was a lifeline, a signal that she had been granted permission to speak. Relief washed over Esther, but she knew that the hardest part was yet to come. The king's scepter was not just a symbol of mercy, it was a bridge between their worlds, a connection that she hoped would lead to understanding and compassion. She bowed her head in gratitude, then raised her eyes to meet the king's gaze, ready to continue her plea.
My king, I am Jewish, and Haman has plotted to destroy my people. The revelation was like a thunderclap, reverberating through the throne room. Esther's voice, filled with emotion, conveyed the urgency of the situation. She spoke of the edict that had been issued, the plans for annihilation, and the fear that gripped her people. Her words painted a vivid picture of the impending doom, a fate that could only be averted by the king's intervention. She pleaded not just for her own life, but for the lives of countless innocents who looked to her for salvation.
The king was enraged by Haman's treachery, his face contorted with anger, and his eyes blazed with fury. The betrayal by one of his most trusted advisors was a bitter pill to swallow. King Xerxes' rage was not just for the plot against the Jews, but for the deceit that had been woven into the very fabric of his court. He rose from his throne, his voice thundering through the hall as he demanded justice. The court watched in stunned silence, the air thick with tension. The king's wrath was a force of nature, and it was clear that Haman would face the full brunt of it.
Haman, you will be executed on the very gallows you built for Mordecai. The king's decree was swift and merciless. Guards seized Haman, dragging him away to meet his fate. The gallows, a grim symbol of his treachery, now stood as a testament to his downfall. Haman's cries for mercy fell on deaf ears, his fate sealed by his own machinations. The court watched as justice was served, a stark reminder of the consequences of betrayal and the power of truth.
The king then issued a new decree, granting the Jews the right to defend themselves. This decree was a beacon of hope, a lifeline for a people on the brink of destruction. It empowered the Jews to stand up against their oppressors, to fight for their survival. The news spread like wildfire, igniting a spark of resilience and determination within the Jewish community. They prepared to defend their homes, their families, and their way of life, knowing that the king's decree had given them a fighting chance. The Jewish people were saved, and they celebrated their deliverance with great joy. The streets were filled with laughter and song, a stark contrast to the fear and uncertainty that had gripped them just days before. Families gathered to give thanks, to honor the bravery of Queen Esther, and to celebrate their newfound freedom. The celebrations were not just a moment of relief, but a testament to the strength and resilience of a community that had faced the brink of annihilation and emerged victorious. Esther's courage and faith had saved her people from annihilation. She stood among them, not just as their queen, but as a symbol of hope and resilience. Her actions had turned the tide of history, and her name would be remembered for generations to come. The people praised her, their voices a chorus of gratitude and admiration. Esther's triumph was not just a personal victory, but a beacon of light for all who faced oppression and injustice. She became a legend, her story a testament to the power of bravery and the enduring strength of faith. The tale of Queen Esther was passed down through the ages, a source of inspiration for all who heard it. Her legacy was etched into the annals of history, a reminder that even in the darkest of times, courage and faith could light the way. The ancient scrolls that recorded her story became treasured artifacts, symbols of a time when one woman's bravery changed the course of history. Esther's triumph was not just a moment in time, but a timeless legend that would continue to inspire for generations to come.